I have always loved Dublin, and I've always taken a great interest in its development, and I have studied it over the many years that Dublin has developed from the up to the 18th century wonderful city that it was. And he gave me the opportunity to pitch an idea which I think is a huge problem, which is getting much closer and much bigger, and that is housing for our people. We have a whole generation of highly educated, smart people coming up, and they've nowhere to live. And we are attracting many people from all over the world to our small, booming economy because we're very good at what we do, and we are terrific Europeans. And the idea is this: it's built on the Dutch concept of a polder. And a polder means to fill in the sea where it's very shallow and it's tidal and it dries out on low tide. And we have that right here. That piece of sea, which I have a photograph here to show you. I'm sitting over there, and that's the sea here. There's nothing new about this polder idea. Fairview Park was a polder up here. That's all infilled land. And my grandfather remembers when North Strand and Fairview Strand was actually a strand. So this is all filled in. And all this land here, which you can see across there, that's all filled in. And the one that everybody watching me today will definitely know is the Point Depot. Because if you went down to, imagine you're going down to a concert in the Point Depot, you walk down along, the big venue is on your left, the roundabout in the middle of the road, and the three little bears we used to have outside the Point, that was the end of Dublin. From there on was the sea, and it was called the Point because it was the point like that where the land met the sea. So what I'm proposing is not new. If we start off by putting a temporary wall of heavy boulders across here, we would trap in approximately 300 acres all around here, which already dries out. And then we would bring in Dutch contractors who do this every day of the week all around the world. They have special ships that go out to sea. They suck up gravel and sand and they bring them in. They're very low bottom ships. They come here and they put pipes, rubber pipes, and they pump in. It would take 1 year, they told me, because I asked them, and they would fill that up with sand completely. When that is coming to an end, we would redirect the Tolka, which flows down here at the moment, and when the tide goes out, it's basically an open, empty sewer, and it's incredibly ugly. And my idea would be to redirect the Tolka around here, across, running in front of Clontarf, down to here. And when this is all filled in and dried out, and when it's getting ready, we would put in on the other side, just here where I'm looking, there would be a new linear park, tree-lined, with a deep river, because we'd put a weir here to stop it draining out with the tide. You'd have a beautiful deep river, tree-lined, with a park on either side, running from here right up to Fairview Park and right up to Annesley Bridge. And when all that is done, and when it dries out, you have 300 acres of land, and every acre of ready-to-go land in the city, which is fully serviced with roads and sewerage, is worth 30 million. So this is a fully self-financing operation. It does not need any government money. When that has dried out, and when we have this beautiful new river flowing along here, with a linear park and trees and all of that, we then put in roads running this way, north-south and east-west, this way here, and you create city blocks, the exact same as was done over at Hanover Quay. And if you wanted to see what this will look like finished, just go over to Hanover Quay and you'll see it. The first and most important thing to avoid dispute on this is not high-rise. There's no high-rise. This would be 5 or 6 or 7 floors, no more. This is high density, but it's not high-rise. What we would achieve here is a 15-minute city where you do not need to own a car, because we could run the Lewis from the Point Depot, which is here, and put a new station out there, just where I'm looking at the moment. And you put in your sewerage and your roads and you get them ready for development. And then you go out to the development industry, and each block is put up for auction for a profit. Everybody doing this is doing it for a profit. The developers want to make up a markup of 25, 30%, and there's no reason why they cannot do it here and produce really good quality, good value homes for a profit. And that's the only way you'll get this done, is people working for a profit. When it goes up for sale, it will be by public tender, so everybody knows everything. And when you buy the plot, here's the first thing: you don't have to pay for it until the work is finished. Which means one of the big costs in development is when you buy a site, you have to hold it for 2 or 3 years while you're getting your planning, while you're doing your building, and that costs a load of money in bank interest. Because the government own this, and because there's no cost to anybody, there's no reason to pay until it's finished. And when it's finished, it will be sold into the market, and when the builder gets his money in, he then pays for the land. Okay, and that would create a huge drop in the price of a house. It also would allow the developer to operate without having to borrow and be worried about borrowing. The second thing is, if you wanted to keep the prices down, is instead of charging the full rate of VAT for this operation, which will produce homes for 40,000 people, give or take, instead of charging the full rate of VAT on the bricks and the mortars and the slates and the tiles, charge 5% for here. Because the government can't have it both ways. They can't be complaining that houses are too dear on the one hand and charging 20% VAT on the stuff that goes in to make them. So they reduce it. The next thing is, we have a tax system that gives a 12.5% rate to the richest people in the world. The people who come in with the Googles and the Facebooks and all of those. Why can't we give that to our own people? The developers who work on this site here, they would go on the 12.5% just for this bit, and that means that it would to bring the price way, way, way down. But they still have their 20 or 30% markup at the end of it. The houses that are, the apartments that would be built here would all be to the highest passive standards, so there would be no requirement for heating. And because you're in a 15-minute city where you've got every shop, the dry cleaners, everything is in walking distance, you have a new Lewis station just out here where you can get uptown in 15 minutes. There's no real reason to own a car. The generation that live here won't need to own cars. So you would have a situation here where there's no pollution from heating oil, there's no pollution from cars. This really would be a modern green city, and it's just out there waiting to be done. That's all. The environmental issues down here are this: when the new promenade goes across here, as part of that design, under it would be a weir, which means that the Tolka would become a full deep river all the way back up, and there would be a fish ramp in it so that you could reintroduce salmon and trout, because the Tolka used to be a famous fishing river. All of the new squares and streets here would be lined in trees. All through the site there would be at least a half a dozen new pocket parks. The big problem here is that when that sea goes away on a low tide, there is a wading bird population, and there would have to be a decision made about how to handle that. And the methodology used in international best practice is called IROPA. And that calls up an assessment of the imperative reasons of overriding public interest, that the demands of humans takes precedence over birds, and therefore you would move as many as you can, and if you can't, that is the price to be paid for doing the job. But I believe that this is a simple solution to create homes for nearly 40,000 people right in the middle of the city, in a whole new green city with its own Lewis station in the middle of the city where people want to live, down by the sea. It would become one of the most desirable parts of Dublin to live in, and it's all there just waiting to be done. And there's no reason to stop it, except it needs the full weight of the government behind it. It doesn't need any money, but it needs really strong political drive to just create a whole new set of rules just for this thing here on its own. If you look across from Clontarf over here, you can see on the horizon a very, very large silo farm of fuel tanks, bunkerage, which holds diesel and oil and fuel for the city, for the country and whatever. And here they are on the map here. That's them there. Now we're getting into a more radical part of this plan now. But the fact is, most of these silos are completely underused, if at all, because they have in Dublin a common pipeline which comes in so that when you go to buy petrol in your various stations and whatever, no matter what brand you buy, it's actually all the same petrol, it's all the same diesel. A lot of these fuel tanks don't need to be there. And even the ones that are in use don't have to be there, because with a simple piece of technology, they could put a 5-mile pipe underground out to the new land they have at the airport and take every single one of those silos out of here. And that would take all the trucks that bring fuel in and out of the city off the road, and it would open up another big chunk of land for this and help to bring Dublin back to its bay. The problem here is that the Dublin port, the man who speaks for them, he keeps saying that they need more and more and more land, and I don't believe he's right. And I think that should be challenged. And the first way to challenge it would be to get rid of all those silos. Now this is all thinking, you know, I won't be around when this happens. I'll be up with Elvis Stardust. And I'm hoping, if it ever happens, and I believe it will, I will be dead and gone, it doesn't matter. But I have my three youngest grandchildren, whose names are Martha, Maisie and Eleanor. They'll be sitting here, I hope, in 25 years as married ladies with their kids, and some of what I'm telling you, they'll be looking out and it will be there. I believe that silo farm could be taken out of there completely by a simple technology, 5 miles of a pipe underground out to the airport. These pipes go across deserts tens of thousands of miles. It's easy to do. And that would bring a huge chunk more land and a huge chunk more housing for people who want to live in the city. The next part of this is radical, but it's doable, and it has been done all over the world, and it works perfectly. And here's how to do it. Just for fun, I got a bit of chalk and I marked up on the wall a simple diagram, but it shows the picture very, very clearly. When I was young and pretty, when I was 15 from school, I used to drive a forklift just over here. And the ships came in. This is the river, this is the Liffey. The ships came in like this, the cargo came out, everything was in different size boxes, different cases, different everything, and it was parked all around here in sheds and whatever, in what was called a donut port on either side, all around. And we came along with the trucks, and when I was 15 with my forklift, I loaded the trucks for my father, and they went off and they delivered. All that is gone. An amazingly simple thing happened. A guy came along one day and he said, why have all these packing cases the same, different sizes? Why don't we make every packing case the same size? And why are we making them out of wood so that when they get to where they're going, the wood is thrown away? If we make them out of steel, we can use them 1,000 times. The container was born. And because containers have done away with all the loose cargo, all of that should be gone. All that donut thing should be gone. And here's the radical bit. Instead of landing the containers, let's say a 40-foot container of cheap toys from China. At the moment, we're putting them down on the ground in the middle of the city on land that's worth 30 million an acre, where people should be living. And here's my idea. You put the container onto a train. And all these tracks are in Dublin Port at the moment, and they go by 24 hours a day, day and night. They run, and the port is in the middle of Ireland, maybe around Portleash somewhere, where all the motorways and the railways cross. So the container comes off the ship onto a train, doesn't hit the ground in Dublin, gone. All this land becomes free. Stop. There's just, the port becomes narrow strips on either side of the river. When the container gets to Portleash, it's already halfway delivered. Huge, huge benefits flow from that. Number one, no more big trucks in the city, gone. When the container is taken off the train in Portleash, every trucking time to go to Galway, Limerick, Cork or whatever is cut in half. Millions and millions of tons of carbon saved. No more trucks in the city. This huge amount of land opened up for development as well. This appears really, really radical, but actually it isn't. This has been done in Germany, it's done in Holland. It really works. You move the cargo, not the port. And that is so important, I'm going to say it again. You move the cargo, not the port. When all the debate was going on about moving Dublin Port up to Drogheda and so on, all of these huge quaysides, which are built over centuries, would have to be replaced up in Drogheda at the cost of uncountable billions. All of that is gone with this idea. You leave them there. You use what we have. You use the cranes. Instead of spending billions, you're getting billions of land here. You're freeing up another couple of hundred, at least, acres worth 30 million each. You do not have to build new jetties. You don't have to build anything. You move the cargo, not the port. Simple. The container comes off, 95% of goods move in container. They don't sit on the ground. Your cheap toys from China, they shouldn't be sitting in the middle of a city. They get on the train brings them away, port in the middle of Ireland, no more trucks in the city, half the journey times of all deliveries, huge gains in using diesel and fuel and creating carbon. Move the cargo, not the port. That's it. And what I'm asking you today is just to consider 3 separate things. They don't have to be related. They don't all have to be done, and they don't all have to be done together. One is a polder here to create 300 acres and to make homes for 40,000 people in the middle of the city, which will be environmentally friendly in a 15-minute city that doesn't need cars. The second one is to get rid of that tank farm over there, which does not, despite what the man from the port tells you, it does not need to be there. And the port does not need more land, even though the tonnages may keep going up. It needs less land, not more land. And then the last one, which again is not connected, is to move the port completely to an inland port in the middle of Ireland by moving all containers by rail, day and night, moving them in and out. And all of these things are doable. I don't think any of this will happen in my lifetime, but it will happen. I believe that what we're setting out today is a simple document which someone in the future, I hope my 3 little girls, whose names I told you before, Martha, Maisie and Eleanor, will be sitting here in 25 years' time with their own children looking out on at least some of this which will happen, because what we're describing today is the future of Dublin.